He's
Oh my
destroying our
God,
honeymoon
Robert. It
system.
actually says that. I can't believe it says this. And I can't believe I didn't notice. How did I not notice? This is crazy. This is porn.
Look right into your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan. The other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather. Titans and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather. Relentless focus on their bodies. Sweet feather, sweet feather. What do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather. No sex, just titillation.
So, did you like this book? Is there anything else we want to talk about before we get to this really excellent book that should be in every single high school in America called Caught in the Middle Sweet Valley High?
Wait, sorry. You said kind of dismissively this book that should be in every. I mean, does it have its faults? Sure. Does it handle racism and bigotry head on in a way that we have heretofore not seen? Absolutely.
And does it actually get so much so right? Yes.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it
that's
gets a
why
lot
my
wrong
sixth
too.
word, okay, well, that's why my sixth word, and I'll just say it because I already thought of it, was it could have been so good. Or like it was almost so much of it is so right, and then
Yeah.
so much of it is
Oops.
makes one, what's the word of not convulse, but kind of
Shake? Are you shaking with it?
shake with rage.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it might be convulse. I think you might be convulsing with rage.
Mm.
I'm sorry to hear you're convulsing with rage.
No, but you know what? It's going to make for an interesting conversation. Do you have a six-word review?
Yeah. It's 7 words. Do I have your permission? No.
No.
Okay.
Robert, I mean, if we don't follow the rules, if we start sort of, it's like an inch becomes a mile. It's
Yeah.
like where it's like kind of like
Where does it end?
devil's slide. What do they call it?
They call
Slippery.
it devil slide. They call it the devil's slide. Yeah.
No, there's slippery slope, but isn't there like a devil version specifically? Of like,
Probably. I think it's called the devil's slide or
no,
devil's
but seriously,
fluke.
they're not a term that I'm thinking of. Am I just making that up?
I couldn't know and won't know.
Yes, go. Seven.
Somebody understands adolescent development, but not racism, which I think is very similar to your like, it was so good and then it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this book, it has so much going for it.
Mm-hmm.
It like, it in so many ways is set up so well. There are like actual kind of stakes. There's spoiler alert, a boat explosion. It just like I was like, this is riveting shit. Where I was like, what is gonna happen? And then at the end, it was like, oh yeah, what happens is what happens in these books, unfortunately.
Yeah, but this book did the thing where sometimes it goes there, right? It goes to the
Hmm.
place that we
Hmm.
know it goes, and then it like jumps off a cliff from there to some other place where you're like, oh, come on now.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
not Dainu, but like some version of like, yeah, and now you've gone too far. Like,
Yeah. Do we want a cliffhanger?
I think we do want a cliffhanger.
So we're in the hallway. This may feel like it was forever ago because we've been on vacation for a while and we had, of course, Double Jeopardy, the first Sweet Valley High Super Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the hallway and Kara and Jess are standing there. And Kara's like, did you see who that was? And Jess goes, no. Sandy and Manuel. No. Are you sure? Positive. And what's more, I asked Jeannie this morning if there was anything going on between them, and she wouldn't tell me. Jeannie West was Sandy Bacon's best friend, and both girls were on the cheering squad. They reached the playing fields to join the rest of the team. Jessica glanced quickly at Jeannie, who was warming up with the others. She dropped her duffel bag and looked around. Where's Sandy? She asked innocently, keeping her eyes on Jeannie's face. The other cheerleader's arm stopped in mid-swing. Oh, she said she'd be a little late, she said in a casual tone. That didn't deceive Jessica. Cara and Jessica exchanged a meaningful look. If anything was going on between Sandra Bacon and Manuel Lopez, it was too hot to keep it a secret. But with parents like Sandy's, something like this could reach the proportions of Romeo and Juliet. Fine, Jessica said smoothly, giving Jeannie a reassuring smile. We'll start when Sandy gets here. Will Sandra Bacon's narrow-minded parents destroy her chance at happiness with Manuel Lopez? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 42, available January 1988. To give just the tiniest bit of context, Manuel Lopez is our first named Mexican-American character. So he is dating Sandy Bacon, which is, of course, what you get when you have breakfast on the beach. Pause for laughter. Okay.
Sorry, I'm literally just like writing a note.
Okay. Wouldn't kill you to laugh while you write.
Because
There we go. There we go. There it is. Sandy's parents are bigots and are labeled as bigots by the text. Like, they've been anti-immigrant, they're anti-Mexican, they're bigots. So this creates a world that is like Romeo and Juliet, much like our last cheerleading mixed couple that was compared to Romeo and Juliet, which was like 4 books ago or something, right? I mean, it was very, very recent.
yes.
So you'd be forgiven if you were like, again.
You know, and I think it must be asked, what are these parallels that are so explicitly drawn, including the literal them dropping explicitly Romeo and Juliet for both instances, both of the girls being on the cheerleaders, it all sort of happening through Jessica, like learning of it or not, like Ricky being like, guys, like we have to be doing practice, her coming in looking more radiant than anyone's ever seen. Don't tell your mom. I mean, it's like, huh? So I think one reading is, if it's framing these as like parallel situations, which is that like, because in the previous book, the reason why the couple was forbidden to each other, why they were so much caught in the middle, was because they actually were caught in the middle between families that were explicitly in conflict. The parents were like, no, I'm mad at you. They were basically like equal in that way. And so they were like caught in the middle of this tension on both sides. Whereas in this situation, it's not that there's an interpersonal conflict, it's that one of the families is racist.
Yeah.
And so it's a conflict that Manuel's family doesn't know exists. So it's like they're participating in something just vis-a-vis of their existence. They don't even know what's happening. The horse doesn't know it's a race, as it were. But it's being framed as if they're actively antagonizing each other or equal enemies or whatever. But it's like, no, one of them's just racist. So I'm like, it could be seen as very ideological in that way.
So my kind of first gloss read was like, Forbidden Love was like the rough draft for this book, where they were like kind of testing out like families at war, and they're like, oh, could we make this actually more relevant to contemporary life and make it about racism? Okay, let's do that here. In the way that like I feel like they were kind of testing the waters for the thrillers before they like actually hard launched the thrillers. But I also don't know that
But why
maybe
make it exactly, why make those things so that you can't, like, it's one thing to repeat a formula, but some of these details
they're the same.
that, yeah, and like, it seems like explicitly saying them, they're trying to draw our attention to it, which would make me think it's also meaningful, maybe, in addition to a successful formula, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm wondering, and you're reading that as ideological. Can you say a little bit more about what that ideology might be?
The ideology is racist. It's an ideology that like
These two things.
people that are targets or victims of racism and that experience racism are like somehow equal players to the one perpetrating the racism just by virtue of existing and having been the target of it. It's as if they're both like on an equal playing field, like power play kind of, right? By comparing it to Forbidden Love and making it as if, oh, again, these two are like subject to this like family conflict where like both parties are in conflict with each other. That erases the fact that like Manuel's family isn't forbidding anything. Manuel's family hasn't made this a problem, and it's sort of erasing that, and it's
Mm.
victim blaming, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I see that reading. I don't have my reading of this was, I guess it depends on who we see as caught in the middle.
Yes.
And that, like,
I got
my
a lot
very
to
first
say on
note,
that one.
yeah, I figured you might. Because my first as a rube note was who is caught in the middle of what? And in my mind, I never read kind of Manuel and his family as like caught in the middle as if they're active participants. It felt like Sandy Bacon was caught in the middle, perhaps. It also feels like Liz ends up caught in the middle, unfortunately, and we'll have to do a lot on that.
In this one, I felt like the B plot was Jessica just being so mean, and it was stupid, and I didn't like it, and I don't want us to spend a lot of time on it. That's my personal opinion.
I can understand that. I do think we should probably summarize it. It's very quick. Lila's birthday's coming. She clearly expects everyone to throw her a surprise birthday party because she has thrown so many parties for everyone else. Jessica, on the surface of it, says, oh, I know how we'll really surprise her. Let's pretend like we forgot her birthday. Let's make other plans for her birthday that she can't come to. And then the day after her birthday, we'll throw her a surprise party and she'll be really surprised. And so that's kind of the whole thing. And they're just like mean to Lila and they pretend to forget her birthday and they do all this stuff. And then Lila shows up, is really surprised. All is forgiven. Isn't this great? I think that is what it is. I think what maybe you're responding to in terms of the meanness of it is that Jess is relishing how cruel she gets to be to Lila and is not even really is not really veiling at all that like she is on some mean girl shit. Like she is explicitly doing this to hurt Lila.
Yeah, like it's a device where she gets to act like she's doing something good in order to just like hurt Lila's feelings and enjoy that. And it's so cruel. And like Lila's whole thing is her loneliness. You know what I mean? Like her dad's never around. All she has is like the new clothes that she ends up getting from his trips. There's no one in her house. No one pays attention to her or would be thoughtful of her. And it's so taken for granted that like people have someone to plan a party for them because like Lila does it for people or their family does it, but like no one's planning anything for Lila, and that's real, and it's not a silly thing for her to be sensitive about. And it's just such a bummer that just exploits this in this way and just delights in her sadness. Mm-hmm. It was just such a bummer.
And it feels like we're being asked to see Lila as a spoiled brat. Like it feels like the reader is supposed to be like, I can't believe Lila is being this way, like blah, blah. But like Lila's behavior where she's like kind of hurt, understandably, by all of this, just makes you sad for her. It doesn't make you feel like, oh, she's such a brat, like she's so demanding of this stuff.
I actually didn't think if you're talking about this book specifically, I didn't think in this book she's being like framed as a brat by the book. I didn't really see that. I thought it was more just, I think the book is sympathetic to Lila. I don't know. We could go to it. Maybe it's not.
I mean, you said you didn't want to spend that much time on it.
Right.
So we're only going to spend an hour.
Maybe it is good.
I mean, we've got to spend at least enough time on it, obviously, for me to tell a story from my past about me being hot.
Someone thinking you're hot, yeah.
Do we have time for this or no?
We do.
My first Valentine's Day.
We should make a Mad Libs of this. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell the story. It's like my first Valentine's Day with my terrible, much, much, much older boyfriend. He pretended like we didn't have any plans. He like literally at one point was like, let's go to, like, we're just going to go Burger King. Who cares? It's not a big deal. And I got like so upset.
It's actually so fucking manipulative, not to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No, please interrupt me because I feel like this story makes me look bad. But if it makes him look bad, I'd love that.
No, I actually think doing that to someone is a way to be manipulative and is also sometimes a way to provoke them. It's like, in a way, and I do not throw this word around, kind of gaslighting.
You've never thrown that word around and you won't start now.
I've never said it. And I'll never
say it.
You've
said it. But
I've never said that word.
You've never thrown it.
I toss it.
You don't like so much of a salad. So like that, I basically told the whole story, which is basically like, I was like, oh, you didn't like think of anything? You didn't like want to do it? And he was like, no, who cares? Valentine's Day is stupid and people care about Valentine's Day are stupid. And I got increasingly upset. And then it turns out he had gotten me a stuffed bear and made reservations at a nice restaurant, and we got to go out for dinner. But I like pitched it like I wasn't proud of the like little hissy fit I pitched when I was like, oh, you don't care about this. But now you're telling me I was right to pitch a hissy fit and that I'm the best. Is that what you're saying?
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Had it already been determined that he was in charge of
I was
planning it, or like it was just an assumption? Because my question would be, how come he wouldn't think you are planning something? Or had he been like, I'll figure out the night I'm going to be in charge of dinner or whatever? How is it framed?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I don't remember how it
You
was
gotta
framed.
know. I ask smart questions. I
Yeah.
ask smart questions. I don't miss. I'm sharp. I don't miss a beat, they say
Yeah.
about me.
They're always saying that about you. I was actually more fearful that you were going to ask, what did you do for him for Valentine's Day? To which I would have had to say nothing. I don't remember I don't remember how it was discussed, but it was very much like I expected him to plan something, and I don't think anyone expected me to plan. Yeah. So I think that this is where the breakdown happens, because
You're both awful. You're
Yeah.
both terrible.
Yeah,
He's manipulative, and you are just sort of
entitled monster,
those aren't nice words, but
but they're
we
right.
can ask. No, but it may be, but it is a good question to ask oneself of why does one assume one is going to be only the recipient?
I always kind of do.
Okay. No, but seriously speaking, I do think people doing that is very manipulative. It's like they're playing with your emotions, they're enjoying seeing you get disappointed, and then you look like an asshole. Then it's revealed, and they get to be like, haha, I'm nice and you're bad. That's what it is.
And I was bad. Both Lila and I are entitled, spoiled, beautiful, rich bitches. So that's the B plot.
Okay, so we should say now the A plot.
We should.
Or at least I kind of feel like we should say it until the like crazy shit that then happens to the boat, because that like takes the next level, and then I think we should just get to that when we get to it. No?
Okay.
Okay, how do you want to do it? Like, am I saying it? Are we saying it?
Why don't we try and say it at the same time? 1, 2, 3.
So Sandra
and Manuel
are dating.
But
Sandra doesn't want to tell her racist parents because they are racist, and he is Mexican American. He's like, Sandra, this is annoying, but keeps kind of waiting around. She keeps doing these very subtle sort of tests where she'll like come home every night and be like, Mom, what if I wanted to date a Mexican boy? Or what if I thought we should go to a Mexican festival this weekend? Or what if I wanted to date someone of a different race? That would be great and good and fine, right? And like Mexican people are just like us, right? Her mom's like, ha ha ha, you dumb crazy fool. Don't even ever say the word Mexican in my house. Those people trying to be speaking their own language and be separate from us, they're trying to be starting race riots, and a parade will probably turn into one. And like, trust me, like birds of a feather flock together, girl, and you should stick with your own. And please don't ever give me such a fright by even mentioning that as a hypothetical again. So she keeps being like, Manuel, I can't tell them.
I like you called those subtle tests, by the way. You referred to them as subtle tests.
I was being funny.
It was funny. I want to highlight how funny it was.
Oh, okay.
You're funny. Sorry. This is weird.
Meanwhile, Sandy like is recruiting Jeannie, who is so much stuck in the middle of this nonsense, because she keeps making Jeannie, her best friend from however many books ago, like cover for her, and she'll like always be like, I'm at Jeannie's, because she like can't say she's out with Manuel, and Jeannie's like gets increasingly annoyed by this. TLDR, Elizabeth ropes herself into it, and then some drama erupts at a boat, and it's a crazy ending, basically.
Okay.
What did I miss?
Yeah, well, I mean,
literally, what else happens?
No, that is what happens. I'm just trying to figure out, like, is that enough? That's probably enough context, right?
Yeah.
Okay, show me the cover. Oh no, I need to guess the taglines, I guess.
Yeah.
Will Sandy Bacon's parents ruin her chances of love with Manuel?
Mm-mm.
Will Elizabeth be able to fix the situation with Sandy and her parents and Manuel?
The situation. No.
Is bigotry bad? Is that
Is love enough to
oh,
keep Sandra and Manuel together?
yeah, is bigotry bad? I mean, that's kind of same vibes. And then the back is a pair of racists, dot, dot, dot. Um, an exciting boat ride, dot, dot, dot.
Boom. No, it's off limits, dot, dot, dot.
Oh, does that feel ideological to you? What are your feelings on that? Or do you care?
It feels like it's saying she wants him because he's off limits. Like off limits is titillating, right? Like off limits is like, oh, you can't have this, like forbidden fruit, forbidden love, kind of, right? And it's like, oh, it's like they're trying to make this fun, sort of.
Yeah, it does. It feels very like naughty in a way that is disrespectful to like Manuel's experiences of racism.
It's like how Jessica would talk about dating a guy in college. Like he's off limits. Not that that's good, but like this is different than that. It's not like, ooh, he's off limits. No, that limit is really fucking a problem.
Yeah. He is off limits because my parents are racist. Is very different than
weird.
He's off limits because he like plays for the rival team or something.
It's also like so much the parents' perspective. It reifies the limit. It's like, wow, that's off limits. It sounds very official. Like it's not like pressure from parents or dot dot dot. You know what I mean? It's saying like that's off limits. It makes it sound like objectively so.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Okay. Ah, you ready for the cover? It's funny.
Oh, it's confusing. So we have Manuel and Sandy. She looks to be a hostage in a beautiful turquoise jumper. And he's wearing kind of like a slate gray button down. And he like it seems like they posed for like a Sears portrait photo or something.
Yeah. Or like as if she's pregnant. He has his arms around her belly. Or like she has her arms around her belly.
That was the other thing I wanted to say is that she looks very, very, very pregnant. I mean, she doesn't look pregnant, but it seems as if she is pregnant. And
remember to go to our Instagram at Sweet Valley High if you want to see the image.
She looks maybe 40.
And he looks maybe 50.
No, he looks 28. She's wearing a single strand of pearls to signify upper class. He's handsome.
His hair is very fluffy on top. He has the Jerry Seinfeld.
He does, and they talk about his hair being curly, don't they?
Well, I think he's just not using any product.
Well, that's the real problem. That's what's keeping them apart. She's using a lot of product.
His hair's cut in this really strange way. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, it's made it emphasized because the fluff is sort of like, acting like so much of an awning over his forehead.
Yeah,
it's kind of
it is coming for like a poodle, kind of a pompadour style appendage, I guess is the word.
I can't.
I mean, she's also got some pretty serious bangs happening. He's not alone.
They've gone back to just a splash of purple ombre background, and they took away all the papers and pencils we got used to seeing.
I wonder if that's what it made me feel like it was more of like a Sears pregnancy announcement. Because it's on kind of like a gradient toned, they're posing for a photo kind of thing. She looks so uncomfortable. He doesn't look super comfortable. She looks, I mean, look at her hand. There's like a tension in her hand.
You could think of them as looking at like the public or even her parents or whatever, and it's like he's looking directly at them and she's looking like giving side eye because like her face is pointed to him but her eyes is pointed to whatever he's looking at in the distance. So I think that could symbolize like she's not ready to take it head on.
I can see that.
All right, okay, let's get into it.
Okay, first paragraph. I still can't believe it, Jessica Wakefield said to Kara Walker as the two girls walked towards one of the sunlit fields of the Sweet Valley High grounds for cheerleading practice. Who on earth would have believed that Sandy and Manuel would fall in love?
For me, the way this book starts, is strange, and you have to do a lot of like telling yourself stories about how Jessica's not racist, because like it keeps wanting us to think Jessica thinks it's a problem and then being like, but she didn't. Let me just explain what I mean. Jessica's like, I can't believe it. Sandy and Manuel are in love. And Kara's like, well, I don't think it's strange. Like, actually, I think they make a good couple, and explains why Sandy looks so radiant. I should have guessed she was madly in love. And Kara seems pretty excited to talk about this. But then Jessica frowns and she's like, Kara, you've changed. And like, if you didn't read any more pages, you'd think, because Kara's like, actually, I think they make a good couple, implying that Jessica doesn't think they make a good couple. Boyfriends, Jessica grumbled. I think people would be better playing the field. And you're like, oh, okay. So they're telling us Jessica's annoyed because it's like another serious relationship. And like, she doesn't think those are good. But you're like, didn't really sound like that's what she was saying, right? She basically is like, well, yeah, because her parents are bigots. And now she's dating a Mexican guy. They're going to be okay with that. And you're like, oh, okay. So she doesn't have a problem with it. She like has a problem because what? Kara doesn't want to gossip about it because she used to gossip more. But it's like Jessica, I feel like they keep trying to set it up like Jessica's espousing the racist view, but then we like find out she isn't. Am I wrong? Sorry, I'm not like explaining it.
No, you are. So I wrote down in my notes, Jessica can't see them together, but Kara can. Jess frowns and thinks Kara has changed. What's that about? So there is this like Jess is frowning over and over again and seems to be extrapolating a lot about Kara, that she is okay with Sandy and Manuel being together. And I think there is one reading that is like she is espousing these racist beliefs. I think the other reading is just that she feels left out. It feels like there's some kind of insecurity. Like the way she describes being in a relationship is, instead of having the fun of going out with a new guy every weekend, you're always stuck with the same one. And soon all the fun disappears. No more presents or surprise phone calls. No more expensive dates. He figures he's got you just where he wants you, and whammo, no more romance. He starts taking you for granted, and you start doing things like Jeffrey and Liz, studying together and boring things like that. And for me, it felt like there was some kind of anxiety within Jess about what would happen if she were in a relationship. And she's saying like, oh, I would get so bored. Like it felt like she's actually insecure that when if she were in a long-term relationship, the guy would get bored of her and start taking her for granted. And so she's actually just opposed to any kind of long-term monogamous relationship. Did you see any of that?
I do see that. And I do think that that's a concern for her. And I think it simultaneously occurs with the concern that like when her friends get into serious relationships, like they have less time for her. Like when she says, Kara, you've really changed. It says before Kara started dating Steven, she and Jess had shared opinions on everything that matters. At first I read that as had the same opinions, but then I read it as no, they're conversing with each other about their opinions. So what she's saying has changed isn't her opinion. Like Kara's misunderstanding her when she says, actually, I think they're a good couple, right? Jessica wasn't saying, oh my gosh, can you believe it? Because she doesn't think they're a good couple. She's wanting to have the delight in the gossip with Kara because that's what they usually do. And it says, now Kara was getting soft. She hadn't been filling her in on the latest gossip she had known about, and she hadn't told her. And she hated to think that Kara excluded her from this. Plus, she looks so sentimental and she was having with a boyfriend. So I think it's all of that together.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And none of it's the racist part, I'm hoping.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because that's not what she's thinking about. And she clarifies. Plus, in the previous book, she already said Sandy's parents was a bigot, and that was the problem with it. She's already said that. Okay.
But there is that weird moment where Jessica, so Maria says, Sandy's with Manuel. I saw him in the hall at their last period. Jessica listened intently. Jeannie was Sandra's closest friend, and Jessica wondered what she thought of her friend's new romance. After all, Manuel came from a completely different world. His family was from Mexico and still spoke Spanish at home. Manuel had always hung around with the Mexican kids at school. Sandra's parents had a reputation for being strict with their only daughter, who was also the youngest in the family. Moreover, they were reputed to be bigoted. And that's the narrator speaking, but it also feels like it's kind of Jessica speaking about thinking that Manuel's from a completely different world.
Mm-hmm.
And that was curious and confusing to me, especially when in the next chapter we see Sandy's parents basically say the same thing, that Mexican people are from a completely different world and they should stay separate. And so there is kind of a weird, there is some weirdness around Jess's thoughts and meaning making vis-a-vis this relationship.
I do think the completely different world has that kind of racist implication, but I guess I feel like what comes after that are pretty just objective details of the fact that he's Mexican and like that's part of his identity, and he speaks Spanish and he's going to the Mexican festival. A lot of his friends are Mexican. They're not going to be able to avoid this. Like if Sandy lets them know she's dating him, like this is going to come up. It could be both, but I guess we don't see any examples of like her having, I don't think, really stereotypes. Like besides saying it's a completely different world, but in a lot of ways, like in their experiences, that could be true. In a lot of ways, they have lived in different worlds. When they talk later about how the community is kind of segregated, or they make these implications about like how white Sweet Valley is and how probably weird it is for people that aren't white and they've never interacted before. I don't know.
Yeah. My only other thing is we don't see a single person speak Spanish in this book at all. So that was another kind of weird thing for me. Like they come from a completely different world, families from Mexico, and still spoke Spanish at home. And it's like, we meet his mom. They do not speak Spanish. We meet his little brothers. There's not a word of Spanish spoken in this text. And I was like, that's also interesting. Like, to what extent is this white Sweet Valley's creation of the way that Mexican American people live in Sweet Valley versus what's really happening?
Well, it's making it all so you don't have to think about that if you only speak English, so that if you're reading this book, you don't have to reckon with the fact that you might not understand something. It's ideological in a way, and I think compounded by the fact that there's none of Manuel's perspective in this book. There's none of his interiority. I'm pretty sure we don't get any of his like thoughts. I don't think we get any scenes of him at home without her there. I don't think, right? Or Liz. And so like we never get him thinking about it or whatever. And it's like, yeah, he's just there to like overextend. They just overextend themselves in this way.
But who's the they that overextend what in what way?
I felt like he was sort of had to be kind of like a model minority.
Oh, yeah.
In a way to like be acceptable. And by overextend, I guess I mean like he keeps taking her shit and like thinking she's so great because she like treats him horribly. And then it escalates to the point where you're like, hell no, hell no, hell no. Like it was disgusting. It was disgusting. The fact that a character did something so horrible and there's no we'll get to it, but like there's no consequences, and like he's basically like, okay, great. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I'm now wondering, like, are we just like kind of vaguely talking about stuff where we should be more specifically talking? Like, if you're a listener and you don't know what's happening, you're just hearing us keep saying like, well, it was really bad and it was but like we haven't actually said too much.
Okay. Well, I guess say it.
Okay.
You can just say what happens, the deplorable thing.
Okay, so basically Manuel keeps saying, I need you to talk to your parents about me. I need them to know, because they keep going on dates and he has to pick her up around the corner and it's just like very, very awkward. And she's like, okay, I'll let them know. And then she invites him to go out on the boat with her, which he takes as an indication that she has told his parents that she has told her parents that she is dating him. She invites Liz along and tells Manuel Liz like kind of inserted herself and she really wanted to come. They go out on the boat. Manuel finds out that Liz actually didn't want to come. Sandy forced it. But we don't have time to litigate that because boom, ... the boat explodes. Like a Michael Bay movie. This boat just like bursts into flames.
To where it's like Elizabeth was like shot up by the force of it, like thrown into the middle of the fucking ocean or the lake or wherever they are.
They're on Second Lake.
Like real explosion.
Real explosion. I mean, to the point where so Manuel and Liz are thrown clear. Sandy, not so clear. Sandy is passed out still on the boat. Manuel swims back onto the boat, rescues her, swims ashore with her, saving her and kind of helping Liz to be okay. Sandy is like in and out, and it's like, my parents don't know you're here. You need to go away. My parents don't know you're here. You need to go away. So he leaves. Newspaper reporters and the cops show up, take the report that Liz saves Sandy's life because Sandy's like, Liz, you have to tell them you did it. You can't let them know that Manuel was here. My parents will kill me. The whole Sweet Valley is heralding Liz as this hero who saved Sandy's life, when we all know it's Manuel who saved her life, of course. And then, to add insult to insult, so kind of squaring the insult on top of the injury, the cops question Manuel because there was reports that he was there messing around with the boat before the boat exploded. So the cops are investigating quote unquote foul play in the explosion of the boat. It so happens that Sandy, her parents, and Manuel are all at the cop station at the same time. Manuel says, I'm Sandy's friend. I did not blow up her boat. The cops bring Manuel in front of Sandy and her parents. The cops say, this young man says that you know each other and that you're friends. And Sandy, in front of her parents, Manuel, cops, and God, says, I've never seen that boy before in my life. Do you have chills? I have chills.
It's
chilling.
Even having read it before, I do not think, if anything, that's the fucking moment. Okay, let me just go off. If anything, I mean, there are so many moments that should have been, if anything, but like, so they're on the boat, and not only is there the explosion that like she's then, her hands are burned, like that guy who fell to the fire on Survivor, Michael.
Oh yeah, of course.
And she's, I don't know, unconscious or something. Anyway, so he not only goes back to save her, he goes back and it's like gonna explode, like the whole boat's then gonna explode again. So he's about to like make himself be exploded for this girl who, her last fucking dying words as she's like losing consciousness is like, my parents can't know a Mexican guy saved my life. Like, Liz, you have to take credit for it. He's like, okay, and like runs off. And then because someone is like, well, actually, I saw there was 3 people. There was this guy on the boat before they went in, and they said, well, there was actually only 2 of us. And because the police like to be racial profiling, they were like, oh, I guess you did that explosion. And then she understands that not only has he not gotten credit for saving her life, and there's a fucking article in the Sweet Valley News about Liz being a hero. Now she knows that he's actually under active investigation for this, and he's going to be blamed for it. And she says, okay, let's just talk about this, right? Like, this is now putting him in a criminal justice situation where he was the hero. He saved her life. She would be a piece of chum for the sharks in Second Lake. Okay. And now she just has some little birds on her hands, and he's going to, God knows what's going to happen to him, because you can't have your parents like handle this. No,
I say no. And
then guess what happened?
What?
The only reason she then changes her mind at the end and is like, actually I lied, he actually is the one, is because they say they were going to call Liz, and she knows that Liz isn't going to take it that far. So far Liz has been saying, okay, fine, I'll still pretend I was the hero and I saved your life, and I'll still pretend, but I'm not happy about this, whatever, which we'll get into it.
We have to.
She knows that Liz, when they call Liz and say, hey, just confirming, like, you don't know who this Mexican guy is, right? You've never heard of him in your life. You don't know anyone ever who could be Mexican. Like, we're going to put him in jail for this. Like, we think he blew up your boat. Like, Liz is going to set a boundary at that point.
We hope.
That's when she decides to change her mind and say, I lied. So I think it's really important that she doesn't have some, like, even at the very end when she has this highly overdue moment of deciding to tell the truth, like, it's motivated by not getting caught. And I need to say just one more thing.
Of course.
During this whole period where Elizabeth is perpetuating this lie and taking on the accolades of being a hero and so on, they have this throwaway thing about how, like, she had like the Wakefield's parents, Jessica, Enid, and Jeffrey were the only ones who knew the truth. And like she had told them. And so at home they're sort of joking about it or whatever. And I'm like, how could the parents be okay with this? They just make some little crack about it. Like at some point, Liz is like, oh, I feel like I should tell the truth or something. And the dad's like, yeah, maybe you should or something. I'm like, what? Why are they not losing their minds over the fact that she's
parents.
like, yeah, it's just, it made me crazy. And then basically at the end, he forgives her. And the parents, oh, well, we didn't mention is that at the end, the parents also suddenly, well, the dad more than the mom.
Yeah.
But the dad like convinces her because like dads are good. The dad decides to be like, well, young man, like, I guess I'm gonna not be racist anymore, and you're actually a hero. And like, will you come to our country club, to our racist white dinner party? And Manuel's like, it would be my greatest honor if only you'll come to the Mexican festival with my family next week. And I'm like, he's fucking grateful for this. Like,
No.
these people are disgusting and have done and are continuing to do like active harm to this person. And he's like, great. And at the end, he's like thrilled to be back with her. Everything's perfect. That should not have been how the book went.
Yeah.
It could have been good. It could have been good if there was consequences for her. It could have been good if he didn't react like that wasn't a big deal. Ugh.
Like, I would have been willing to go along with the parents' pretty sudden about face to be like, oh, you're actually a good person. Like, maybe I'm not okay with all Mexicans, but I'm okay with this Mexican because you saved my daughter's life. Like, that happens periodically. You see like Republicans who are like, oh, my kid is trans, and so now I need to be a better person about, like, you periodically see that. But the idea that he takes it and it's like, this is great. I love Sandy so much that it is fine with me. And I'm like, the idea that it is the same for her dad to say, come to this stuffy white club where you are explicitly not welcome, but we'll make you welcome. And he's like, only if you do me the honor of coming to this festival, which is not exclusive and not exclusionary and not classist and not racist. It's like the book, I think you would say ideologically, wants us to equate those two things when it's like, these two things are not at all similar. So had he just said, actually, I don't think I can have a relationship with you, Sandy. Like, I wish you nothing but the best, but I'm out. I would have been like, okay, this book does what it needs to do. We didn't get that. That's not the book we got.
Because a lot of what does seem realistic about this is, for example, there's some interesting dynamics between her and her parents. And
yes,
like
I want to talk about that.
And, yeah, and like how to sort of deal with realizing that you're sort of enmeshed and you need to separate yourself, and you might have changed and you might be different from them or whatever. You have to look at them different a little bit, or you're critical of them. That's interesting. If her treatment of him would have even still been so bad, but it would have been framed and responded to and recognized as bad as it was, this could have been a great book.
Yeah. But I could see somebody reading this book and being like, okay, the lesson is the onus is on the people who are being discriminated against to be the bigger people. Like, it's actually not even, sorry, that's not even true, because it's not even framed as if he is being the bigger person. They're being the same size person in the world of the book. Like,
exactly. It's a false equivalence. That's the whole thing, right? And then she says in her little impassioned speech to her parents, she says something like, you've always taught me to be tolerant. And like,
no, they
now,
haven't.
and I'm like, what? Just the way they have their realization just feels so false. Even if I agree with you that it does happen that having a personal or familial relationship with someone from a culture or race or whatever group that like you have some discrimination against impacts people to evolve their views on it. But just the way this happens for them, where they have this like supposed light bulb of like, yes, we have been racist. And like sometimes your kids have to teach you things. I'm like, really?
Do
so
they?
Now your views on Mexican people have just like completely evolved overnight to where like everything's fucking hunky dory at your country club.
Also, it's not even overnight. It's like within moments.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've done a lot of railing against this book. Do we want to go into the text and look at some moments
that we like?
For a segment I call Moments We Like in This Book?
I only have one comment from chapter 1.
Okay.
There's an interesting thing where it's like, I think it's Jean saying to Sandra, like, can't you talk to your parents? Do you think they change your mind once they met him and see how great he is or something? And she says, like, no, it isn't just a superficial prejudice, which I feel like is pretty interesting because she's actually acknowledging, like, this isn't just a case of if they met him and see how great he is, like, they might be more open. Like, this is a deeply held core belief for these people.
Yeah.
So it again makes it even more shattering credulity that at the end they say great, but okay.
It is also just really, really the phrase, it isn't just a superficial prejudice with them. I know how they really feel and they'd kill me, absolutely kill me if they knew about Manuel. Also just feels a little like it's confusing to so like you're saying it's like their deeply held belief, which I think is true, but it's also like using the word superficial here makes it seem like no, they're really deep about it. Like they have real reasons. And it like gives it a little more than I think obviously it deserves.
Totally. It's a very strange word to say because prejudices are inherently superficial. So to say it isn't superficial, I agree, sounds like, oh, it's like, so you're saying it's justified? But so
Yeah.
that's why, like, I didn't think that's what she was saying. So that's why I then thought it meant she means it's like deeply held. But maybe that ambiguity is part of it, like, because she is torn between not
Whoever.
justifying, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to do with that. Jessica is lounging and she's dreaming. And she's right in
Yeah.
the middle of a wonderful dream in which Lila had decided she was sick of being the richest girl at Sweet Valley High and was writing a check to Jessica, giving her all of her money. And I was like, this is to me, very, very interesting. Like it just was interesting. I don't know what to say. I just like, oh, is there a lot more status stuff happening than I'm thinking about?
Well, it precedes the mention of the birthday party. So that's kind of her, that's what she's going into the birthday party thing thinking about. So I guess we're meant to understand that, yeah, she's feeling particularly resentful. I mean, I don't remember. I mean, what happened and why? Because if we think of this as coming after Outcast, what does she have to be resentful of Viola about? I mean, if we thought of it as coming after the thriller, she has to be resentful of the fact that she's been trying to be chased with a Trans Am and been almost killed while Lila's probably vacationing in, south of France or something. But I don't know if anything happened recently.
I agree. And I do think like the most common reaction after someone is trying to be chasing you with a Trans Am is to be pissed at your rich friend because being rich means you don't get chased with a Trans Am. Oh, I'm into chapter 2. Can you, in the first paragraph, the sentence that started, Sandra felt she had to pinch herself.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just read the whole sentence to me?
Hold on. No, now I have to read the whole paragraph to just understand this. Hold on. Promise you'll call me tonight, Manuel said huskily in his slightly accented voice. And let us remember everyone has an accent.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you think you don't have an accent.
Oh, we laugh.
He had been waiting for her when she and Jeannie got out of practice and had insisted on driving her home, even though she would have been happy to walk. Okay, so they got out of practice. He insisted on driving her home. She said she could walk. He said, I'm going to drive you. Sandra felt she had to pinch herself to prove she wasn't coming.
So your book says coming too? I thought it was so sometimes my book, like, because it's an ebook, gets it wrong, and I assumed it was dreaming. Your book says coming? She had to pinch herself?
Wait, could it mean that Jeannie's not coming and now she's going to be alone with him? Whereas versus if Jeannie had come with, then they'd all be in the car together? Is that what that could mean? Because otherwise, where's Jeannie? Right? He's driving them both? Or no, he's just driving her home. Oh my God, Robert. It actually says that. Guys, okay, to be fucking clear, what we are saying is it goes, okay, so Manuel, she gets into practice with Jeannie. Then he insists on driving her, not both of them, her, Sandy, home, even though she, Sandy, would have been happy to walk, period. Then Sandra, also known as her, the one being getting the ride home, felt she had to pinch herself to prove she wasn't coming. And I'm just trying to think of, and I don't think there is. I think we've eliminated other readings because it's not that Sandra's not coming somewhere. I mean, she's getting her ride home. I don't know. Jeannie is out of the picture. I mean, it's a Freudian slip, as someone I went to high school with once said, for dreaming. And this is orgasm, and we're talking about orgasm.
And
The
so
female
she,
orgasm, the elusive, whereby this the rare species of the female orgasm.
I hate what's happening. Love you. That voice turns me on too much. I can't hear it. I have to pinch
That's
myself to prove I'm
crazy.
not coming.
Wait, I can't believe it says this, and I can't believe I didn't notice. How did I not notice? This is crazy. This is porn. Sandra
It feels
had to pinch
pornographic.
herself to prove she wasn't coming. This is perverted. Someone was being in a perverted mood when they wrote this.
So that's it. I don't really have any analysis there. I just think it's important to prove you're not coming.
I mean, chapter 2, we get into the whole story of Manuel, and he's responsible and he has to help pay for college because there's so many kids in his loud, cheerful, warm environment house. Sandy is getting back home and thinking about how great Manuel is and how he's gonna get a job to help out or whatever. And she's thinking about this as she lets herself in the front door of the Spanish style house her parents had built 10 years ago. She's like, that was one of the things she admired about Manuel. And isn't it interesting, that they kind of are reminding us that although the house is Spanish style, the actual Spanish things or speaking people are not exactly welcome. So they like things that are Spanish style.
I mean, who doesn't like a Spanish style house?
And then I think we get into one of these pretty interesting dynamics and conversations between her and the mom. Do you want to?
Yeah. I do want to say the way that they talk about Manuel and like he has a lot of responsibility. He coaches track at the elementary school. Like that does feel asset based. Like so much of this book takes an ideologically deficit based approach. But this is showing like because of the situation he finds himself in, he is more mature, there I'll say it, than some of his like, do you know what I mean? Am I saying something or no?
Yeah. In other words, in the book, like Manuel gets in a lot of ways, besides the fact that he's pretty happily accepting this shitty treatment, his actual personality and behavior and his character is described in a very flattering way. Like he has a lot of very good qualities and he seems someone that most of these kids would think is pretty great.
Yeah. Can we get a little bit of her thought process about stuff? It gives us insight into what it is like to be an adolescent and to be part of the task of adolescent development is to distinguish yourself from your parents and to differentiate yourself and individuate from kind of the context and environment that you grew up in. In the past, she confided in her mother about everything, but now she wondered if she didn't tell her mother too much about her personal life and if her mother didn't pry too much. I'm only thinking this because of Manuel, she reminded herself uneasily. Before Manuel, I didn't have anything to hide from mom and dad, but now I do. Mm-hmm. So it's just this, it's I think, really effective and, as I would say, you would say, we would say, well observed. This idea of kind of one of the tasks of adolescence is understanding what a healthy relationship with your parents looks like, understanding how much to share, how to be, who to be, and how you're similar to them and different from them. I think this book does a really good job observing that.
I completely agree. That was a piece I really enjoyed because it felt very realistic. It feels very realistic that from inertia or whatever, you'll sort of go along with some, I don't know if this is actually what it is, but the word I'm thinking of is like enmeshment or like codependence or just like them being very involved or whatever. When everything you're doing is consistent with all of their opinions, that hasn't presented any problems for her yet. So like the time where it produces discomfort is when it's forcing her, like she's uncomfortable with her mom being involved, not because it's annoying that the mom pries, because it's annoying that the mom pries because she can't answer it. Right. She feels like, right? So that's what's making it create this break or feel like there needs to be a break, which is interesting. Her first try at broaching the topic of Mexican people, and she tries to do it very enthusiastically. She's like, look at this. And she takes the newspaper. There's going to be a Mexican festival in Sweet Valley. Isn't that great? And Mrs. Bacon's frowning and as she spreads icing on a cake. And she's like, I have to admit, I've got some misgivings. Don't you remember what happened during that festival in Los Perros when those riots broke out and people got hurt? It may sound terrible, but I wish they'd cancel the festival. I don't like the idea. And Sandra's like, what could possibly go wrong? You just think Mexicans are hot-tempered, that they start riots. Horrified by her mother's unconcealed prejudice. She doesn't even conceal it. Mrs. Bacon shrugged. I don't know what I think. I just know that we've seen enough racial tension in this part of the state to last a long time. Remember, she added, her eyes dark with concern, I grew up in a neighborhood where racial violence tore the community apart. I know what it's like. Mrs. Bacon had grown up in a town plagued with racial tension, and it had left permanent marks on her. But this time, Sandra did not feel sympathetic.
Good.
Well, canceling the festival doesn't sound like the answer to me, Mom. The Mexicans in Sweet Valley should be proud of their heritage. I think it sounds great. And she's like, stay away from it. I'm proud of you for being open-minded, but don't blind yourself. You know what kind of trouble those people can cause. And Sandra gets really upset. And she's like, why do you call them those people? And she's like, they're trying to be different. They're doing a festival, trying to have their customs and speak a language, and they're foreigners and they're not Americans. And Sandra's like, you are Americans. Like, oh, my parents are bad. And I was really interested in like the allusions to the mom's experience. And like, there's a thing later where she's like, it took me most of my adolescence to figure out. There's all these weird, like, oh, how she grew up. And it's like, oh, so this is happening. They're in Southern California, 2 hours or whatever from LA. This is during period of racial tension, police brutality, racial profiling being like increasingly problem in LA. And it's interesting, the book kind of like situates it in that. And they're saying that like the reason she has this perspective is because she's experienced some of that firsthand, but they never say exactly what it was. And I do think it is ideological, but the book's pointing it out. This use of word like racial tension and racial violence, it's also doing this like sort of false equivalence work of like racial violence or racial tension is just this like cloud, and like you're not blaming anyone. You're not saying it was racism. Like you're saying like, oh, there was tensions between the races and they were all being tense to each other. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like that's how the mom talks about this stuff. And it's like before Sandra was sympathetic, but now she's maybe clocking some of these things different, you know?
And I even think that they do a good job of demonstrating the way that like Sandy is actually not particularly good at talking to her mom about these things. Like she doesn't have the language or she like approaches it in a 16-year-old way where it's like, they're not foreigners they're not American. Like, what do you mean by those people? Like, how are they any different for like that's a very 16-year-old approach as opposed to like kind of a more nuanced way that might actually help her mom see something.
I don't agree. I think she did pretty good.
Well, can I say, it's not that I think she did badly. I think this is a well-observed picture of what a 16-year-old girl would do. She's like not citing statistics and not like, you know, she's just like, this is what I think a 16-year-old would
like
say.
Citing statistics you think is going to convince the mom? I mean, what makes you say that that would be more effective? She's expressing her opinion. Like she's saying they should be proud of their heritage. They should celebrate it. Like that's a good thing. And Mexican people aren't all a certain way. And like, just because they're having a festival doesn't mean they're going to start a riot. And they're actually not different from us. And I do think they actually are Americans. I'm not saying she has some so sophisticated whatever, but I think it's pretty good.
I think it's great for a 16-year-old. I think it's like well observed for how.
I don't even think for a 16-year-old. I think for a like 16-year-olds are really dumb.
Yeah. I mean, I've read these books.
Dumb.
Really dumb. They're constantly getting chased by Trans Ams. They're going to the woods with boys.
Oh, okay. Then they go through the whole song dance of, well, there's a nice guy at our country club and you're going to be dating him, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Chapter 3. At the Lopez house. And Sandra's enjoying all of them. And sometimes the casual home is the one that is having all the love.
Like Regina's house.
And like the sergeant's house in Malibu somewhere. And even Mr. Oliver from leaving home with the lottery ticket. He lived in even the poor part of town and he was still having a nice boss.
He just wanted to have his granddaughter ride horses.
Basically, his family's lovely. The mom says, stay for dinner. Great. I'm going to show you how to make tortillas. And it's like hilarious because Sandy's so uncomfortable because the mom is like delightful. But like she keeps saying stuff that's like making Sandy be like, like she's like, we're going to make tortillas. And Sandy's like, And then she's like, yeah, like white parents tell them you're staying over. We're going to teach you how to make like real Mexican food. And she's just like, they don't want to hear the words real Mexican.
Yeah. All of that food gets so chopped up into tiny pieces. That's what Springfield always says.
And then she takes the phone in the other room to call her mom, tells her she's staying at Jeannie's house, and Manuel overhears it. And she's like, I still can't tell them. He's like,
And she's still, what I think is so well observed is as she talks to Manuel, she says, they can't help it. They don't mean to be like they are. I mean, basically, they're good people. It's just like we're in real time watching her reckon with this. And so it's very tempting to be very critical and be like, oh, like, why aren't you denouncing your parents? And like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not begrudging any reader who has that reading. But I do think like for a 16-year-old, and I keep saying famously stupid, I think it's like, this is real. This is like dealing with your parents kind of seeing their flaws.
yeah. And then Manuel's like, all my life I've met people like that, basically good people, who think just because my last name is Lopez and my skin is brown instead of white, that I'm not worth bothering with. I'm just sorry your parents are like that, that's all. But I'm not surprised. I guess in a community like this one, you get used to prejudice and you learn to live with it.
I feel like Manuel is a little kind of Jeffrey Frenchish insofar as his ability to clearly and articulately and very maturely kind of state his feelings and cut through the bullshit. And the moment that feels most Jeffrey Frenchish to me is Sandy's crying and she goes, Manuel, I'd do anything to make them change their minds. I can't stand sneaking around behind their back. It makes me feel terrible. And Manuel's quiet for a minute and he goes, would you really do anything? Then why not talk to them? Let them meet me. And she goes, soon, just give me, and like, I just felt so, I was so enamored with Manuel and the way that he was able to say, like, he wasn't just like, oh, that's so sweet that you do anything. He was like, well, if you say you do anything, would you be willing to do the bare minimum? I just thought it was great. And it felt Jeffrey Frenchy, the way that's like, I'm cutting through the bullshit. Do you buy that or no?
I agree.
No, thank you. Can you say it into the microphone just for everyone to hear?
Say what?
I agree with you.
I agree with you.
It's just like these moments happen so few and far between. We really got to treasure them.
I mean, next moment when she's like, what if I dated someone Mexican? And then the mom's like, it took me most of my adolescence to find out that they actually are different from us. ...
Yeah, it's so confusing because so the mom's main thing is they're so different from us. And Sandy's main thing is observing the ways that they are so different. Like she's constantly like, she looks around the Lopez's living room and she's like, this is so different. And then she comes back to her own house. She's like, this is so different. Her mom is knitting and watching TV and her dad is sitting at the desk doing paperwork. Again, Sandra thought of the contrast between this rather formal room and the comfortable clutter of the Lopez. Like, it's interesting because they're not so, they're observing similar differences or something. You know what I mean?
But in some ways they are so different. Like,
yeah.
She is noticing that she likes some stuff, but their family better.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways, mom is approaching their differences from a deficit perspective, and Sandy is trying to work through approaching them from an asset-based perspective.
I don't know. Whatever.
You tell him. Solving racism one whatever at a time. Speaking truth to power, Dr. Rebecca Pardo says, and I quote, whatever. One fist raised proudly in the air. It's beautiful what you're doing. Resist. Whatever.
Okay. Blah, blah, eyes and ears. I can't. It's just fucking Liz is like, let me talk about eyes and ears. Like the way Liz gets supposedly roped into this is because she is trying to write about them in eyes and ears. And like Sandra's like, don't, my parents are racist. I want them to find out. And Liz is like, I don't think that's good. And like, if you really insist, I'll take it out. Like, again, being a dumb bitch, because anyone should be allowed to have their stuff removed from eyes and ears. You shouldn't have to explain why, even if it is from being racist.
A. B. I know that we've seen Jess and Cara talk about Manny. I want to call him Manny, but no one will, so I won't.
But you know what? I think they do call him Manny. Like, I feel like there is a mini. Maybe that's in junior high, like, or maybe that's in Sweet Valley Twins, or maybe it's later in the series, or maybe I just imagine it. We can look it up later.
But does Elizabeth not know about this? Like, does Elizabeth not know about the Bacon's famous racism and stuff? Because it does seem a little weird to me.
No, because on page my 43, she's like, I can't imagine my parents objecting to anything about whatever. Like, do you mean something like his religion or family background? Sandy, do you mean that you want to keep your relationship with secret because your parents don't like how he's Mexican?
And it's confusing me that Jess understands this instinctively. Kara understands, like, it seems like everybody understands it but Liz. Am I wrong?
It's because she found out through Lila about the letter to the editor. Like, Lila, for some reason, has exclusive access to this letter to the editor about
Okay.
against immigration.
So it's like
So
behind a
she told those
paywall,
girls.
probably.
So she told those girls. Not every single piece of gossip is going to make its way from Jess to Liz. I mean, I'm sorry, but there's only so many hours in a day. Liz has to do some of her own work here. All right.
As you famously say, whatever. And Liz has this moment where she's like, your parents are wrong, but what you're doing isn't right either. You shouldn't sneak around. You need to face up to them. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, and I think she makes a good point, which is by keeping it a secret, you're reinforcing that, like, this is basically something shameful.
Yeah.
Chapter 8? What?
We're at the picnic, Sandy and Jeannie.
It's not a picnic, it's a barbecue. It's a barbecue at the West's house. The Wests are family friends with the Bacons.
I mean, the chapter does start, of course, with it was a perfect day for a picnic. So, I mean, maybe that's just like commentary on the weather. Like, it's a perfect day for a picnic.
Okay, I'm sorry, but chapters also start with things like she couldn't believe she wasn't actually coming. Okay, fine, you're right.
Pinch yourself to stop herself from coming.
Fine, I guess it's a barbecue picnic. Sounds freaky to me.
Yeah, you firmly believe that barbecues and picnics should be very separate.
It's
They're
not a
very
picnic.
different.
You don't have a picnic at your own fucking house. It's their grill. It's in
lawn.
their home. It's in their home.
They have
It's a barbecue.
spacious lawn.
What makes it a picnic? They're sitting on the floor?
I think they're probably on the grass. Picnics.
All right, if you say so.
Whatever. I like getting you at the end of a very long day where you're like, I've lost my fight. It's beautiful. So at this barbacoa, and there's stress because Mrs. Bacon and Jeannie's mom are really good friends. And so because Sandy's apparently been spending a lot of time with Jeannie, there's like some confusion over like, will Jeannie cover, etc.
Jeannie's getting annoyed. She's like, this is annoying. I don't like having to keep blah, blah, blah.
We get a little more on kind of what Pardo threw around as enmeshment. Mrs. Bacon had always been interested in Sandra's plans and loved to hear about her activities with her friends. Sandra never really noticed until recently how involved her mother was in her life.
She tries another hypothetical.
Yeah, I just like, this is so, what it feels like to me is like, I don't think I ever did this, but I know that some queer people do, where you're like 12 and you're like, Mom, what would you do if my brother Timmy were gay? Like, you're just like throwing out a hypothetical that we all can see through. And I do wonder, like, do we think the parents can see through this or can't see through this? I think they probably can't. I don't know.
I don't know.
But
I mean, you would think she could because it's laid on so thick.
So thick. And it's like, it's not as if she's constantly giving all sorts of hypothetical, like, she's not like, what would it be like if our knees were on the other side of the leg? Or like, what would you do if you had $1 million? They're all hypotheticals about dating a Mexican person.
I think it could be either or, and either or makes sense. Like, if she does see through it, she's then implicitly telling her, like, cut this off. If she doesn't see through it, she feels the same way. I mean, I don't know. And then she's like, I was up all night thinking about, oh my God, the Mexican people. Like, please don't ever even say that word again.
Yeah.
They make the plans. We learned that Sandy got a speedboat on her last birthday. I'm like, speedboat? That's an expensive birthday present for Sandy Bacon, I feel.
Yeah, I wondered about, like
they said it like it was nothing.
We don't talk about classism at all in this text. The only difference is their race. But I'm interested in how much of we know that racism and classism are imbricated and very.
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's true. Robert, why would you say that?
What's funny is you're adopting a stance, but that stance is still very Pardo-like, so it's hard to tell if you're kind of joking or because I mean that's kind of your response to I'd say 80% of what I say. We get this talk between Manuel and Sandy. And again, Manuel is just really good at saying, like, do you have any idea how rotten it makes me feel having to sneak around all the time, meeting you places instead of being able to come pick you up? It makes me feel really low, like some kind of second-class citizen, underlined. It makes me feel like you're ashamed of me. And then Sandy says, that isn't true. I'm crazy about you. The truth is, I found out something terrible this afternoon. I guess I've lived my whole life exactly the way my parents had mapped it out for me. It never occurred to me to question any of their values. Now, for the first time, I have to face the fact that they're wrong. Really wrong. I know in my heart that what you and I feel for each other is wonderful, and there's no way I'm going to give it up. And I like that feels well observed. She's like working through this. And then he says, you keep saying that, but when it comes right down to it, you aren't willing to talk to them.
Something that feels really realistic and kind of bullshit too is when she says, the truth is I found out something terrible this afternoon. She's exaggerating, like she's making it sound like there was some big reveal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's also like centering herself. Like, oh my gosh, like I actually found out this like really big thing happened to me today. It's like what you quote unquote found out is more just like a thing you didn't want to look at before of like your parents' racist attitudes. And it's like, that's not something you found out. That's something you realized or decided to face or whatever. Like,
yeah,
you're annoying.
You can it's not that you found it out, it's that you can no longer deny it, which you've been working to deny it for a long time. It's like this adolescent narcissism that's like an egocentrism that is totally developmentally appropriate, where she is like, this is happening to me. It's not happening to you. It's actually happening to him. And you're doing it to him.
And like, I don't know how conscious of this she is, but it is also manipulative because it's like getting him to stop being critical of her, which is a very legitimate, reasonable thing that he's asking from her, by distracting from that, by focusing on like herself as, oh my God, I found out this thing. Whatever. She's so annoying. Okay. And then she's like, let's go out on the boat and I'm going to tell my parents about it. But that's not what happens.
Do we want to do Pascal's very, very obvious next book thing?
Enu's grandmother?
Or do you want to save it for the end?
I think we can just say the word Enu's grandmother and then get to it at the end.
That sounds good to me.
Enu's grandmother is a person.
A beautiful person. A person we're going to learn a lot about next book, if you know what I mean.
Do you have any feelings on the birthday banner? They're doing this like a trade union banner for Lila's birthday. Each panel is going to represent a different aspect of Lila's life. The one panel is Lila shopping, Lila giving parties. The two things I want to say about this is number one is actually a very sweet thing to do.
I thought you'd like it.
Is interesting. And number two, they did it on Housewives of New Jersey for Teresa for her birthday month.
Did they also describe it like a trade union banner?
I don't know. Maybe.
I had never heard the phrase trade union banner before, and I Googled it, and apparently trade unions made banners.
Oh my God.
Yes, part of you have something you'd like to share with the class?
Okay, then.
Wait, sorry. And trade unions were banned in England, and so they used to make the banners secretly. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that they're secretly making this birthday banner in the style of a trade union banner, which would also be made secretly. That's all.
I did think it was funny when so Sandy tells Manuel that she's telling her parents the truth of that she's dating him because like then they'll know that she's on the boat with him. But she like tries to get someone else to come so she can like hide behind that person. So first she does it with Jean. She's like, hey Jean, want to go boating with us? It'll be so fun. Jean's like, I'm actually busy, but you're actually annoying because you're obviously just doing that so you can tell your mom you're with me.
I love it.
That was satisfying.
That was so satisfying.
And then she asks Liz instead. And Liz also is like thinking that Manuel asked her to come or whatever. Manuel's thinking that Liz asked her to come. And then on the boat, it gets revealed that like neither of them fucking wanted Liz to be there. And they sort of realize that Sandy's just being annoying. Whatever.
God,
Okay.
you're really bringing your A game tonight, Pardo.
I'm sorry, I'm so tired. Boat.
You want to hit that boat?
Basically, they're having a very nice time, and suddenly there's a little bit of a noise.
Well, what
I'm
could that
thinking,
be?
what's this noise?
It's probably nothing, right?
Liz, can you hand me that toolkit? The engine's
Sure.
smoking a little. Are you sure it's safe to play with the engine? Sandra says yes. Suddenly, the boat begins to jerk violently, and the steering wheel shook in Manuel's hands. The next thing Elizabeth knew, there was an incredible explosion. Flames burst up from the engine, and Elizabeth screamed as the force of the blast sent her up into the air. Then the icy water of Second Lake closed around her eyes.
Is this supposed to be funny or not funny? Sorry.
When she opened her eyes, Manuel was swimming towards her. He's calling Sandra's name, Elizabeth dizzy. Ba, 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 ba. And then she's like, there's gasoline stowed under the seat. Manuel, the whole boat could explode. Sandy's unconscious. Her lip form in his arms. Blah, blah, blah. And then he basically gets them to swim back to shore and runs away so no one knows that a Mexican guy was there. This is so stupid. I hate it. I hate it so fucking much.
It's
And
really
Liz
bad.
completely colludes. Liz completely colludes.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to believe that Liz is in the middle and she doesn't have a good choice. And I think we're maybe do you think we're supposed to be like, oh, you think no?
Oh, sorry. I'm shaking my head at her.
Oh, of course. SMH. Remember when that was a thing?
Hmm.
But
SNDH, shaking my damn head.
absolutely. But like, so it's position. Sandy says, you saved me. You're the only one who can be here. Everyone shows up. Everyone assumes Liz saved her. Sandy says she saved her. Liz is kind of like, oh, I don't know. And we're supposed to be like, well, I guess she couldn't do anything. But it's like, she very easily could just tell the truth? Question mark? Exclamation point?
It's crazy that she goes along with it. It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's so wrong. And she like let both the like park ranger and the reporter, she like basically is like, yeah, I did it.
It's insane. Not to throw that word around.
And Sandy's like, Liz, by the way, can you go to my wife's house and like apologize to her for me? Liz is like, okay.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Then Liz
What?
goes to his house and he's like, well, I'm just worried about her. Like, is she okay? And I'm like, she's a
Say it.
disgusting, disgusting person who, after you literally risked your life to save hers, told you disappear. Disappear. She's disgusting. And he has to be like worried about her. And he's like, as long as she's all right. One of the ways in which Liz is in the middle is that she's the one who gets to actually experience and express the outrage that should come from Manuel.
That's true.
It's like he's not allowed to be angry, barely. So Liz is the one who's like, has to talk about how unfair it is and stuff like that, you know? And like,
she's like, you're not going to accept her apology, are you? Aren't you sick of her trying to hide you?
then we get to the racial profiling. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, listeners just know that Manuel like speaks very, very, very cogently and beautifully about all of this stuff in a really meaningful and powerful way.
Yeah, and then Sandy's like, never seen him in my life. My scrawlings got crazy. And then after she is at risk of getting caught, because they go to call Liz to confirm, she's like, oh, actually, I lied. He saved my life and he's Mexican and I love him.
Truly wild. Just
Like
like
she tells the truth and the parents decide not to be racist anymore.
as is pretty common.
One little moment that I did like, one little moment of, I don't know, resistance or something from Manuel. When Mr. Bacon's doing his whole like young man, like after he's heard the truth being like, oh, I just want to clarify, make sure I understand things, okay? He's like, okay. And he's like, as far as I can deduce from this convoluted tale, you fall in love with my daughter, am I right? And he nods and he's like, and you wanted to meet us and come into the open, but Sandy made you keep it quiet, right? And he's like, yes. And he's like, and now then there was this accident and you were courageous and you actually jumped into the fucking boat to save my daughter. Isn't that correct? He's like, yes. And he's like, so why did you let everyone think it was Liz? And he's like, I love Sandy. I wouldn't hurt her for the world, but I knew she wasn't ready to face you. I had to keep it quiet. And Mr. Bacon's amazed. Wow, he's so great. And then he says, his next question is, and you would have let us believe that you had actually tampered with the engine? you would have taken blame for an act when actually you deserved incredible acclaim. Here, Manuel hesitated. I think, sir, that I wouldn't have taken blame for something I didn't do. To keep quiet is one thing, but to confess to a crime I didn't commit, well, ... My family is very proud, Mr. Bacon. I think it would break their hearts if they think I'd done something they would be proud of. And I was like, I really liked that because I actually felt like Mr. Bacon wanted him to say, yes, I would have taken the blame, right? So it's like Mr. Bacon wants him to be so self-sacrificing, and so that's what I meant also by like the overextending is like that's what they want of him, to be this like permissible
Perfect.
minority. Yeah, or like perfect minority. And he's saying like, even though he's forgiving a lot of stuff,
Too much stuff.
there's a limit.
The dad basically says, I want to thank you for saving my daughter's life, and I want you to know that you're always welcome in my house. Mrs. Bacon looked miserable and confused, as if she didn't know what to do or say first. I feel like I ought to thank you too. She does not thank him. Please note that. That is not a thank you. I feel like I ought to thank you is not a thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's like when Bruce said to Liz, I probably owe a lot of people a lot of apologies, then ran out the door.
Yeah. Lifetime prejudices were hard to shed in a moment, and it was evident that she was feeling distinctly uncomfortable at the idea of Manuel and Sandra as a couple. But it was also evident that she was trying very hard. I feel I owe my daughter thanks too. I don't know when you grew up as fast as you did, but suddenly you're not a child anymore. You're a young woman with your own opinions and feelings. Until this afternoon, I don't think I realized how hard I was trying to hang on to you, how hard I was trying to keep you young. You've both taught me a lesson today. And then Sandra just jumps up and is like, oh, Mom, and is like so happy. And it just like, it's all so gross.
Mm-hmm.
We're back together. Sandra and Manuel have like found love. She's breathlessly saying, God, I've missed you. She's pinching herself so she doesn't come. It's
so crazy. It's so crazy. We're going to have to do a screen grab of that in the works cited.
Yeah. It'll be the first time we works cite the actual text.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I've missed you too. Those days without you were unbearable. I didn't even know how you were, and the thought of not being able to visit you. And she whispers, let's never have another misunderstanding. And he says, that sounds good, but we will have misunderstandings. Couples always do. We just have to count on the fact that underneath it all, we're friends. We'll just get through somehow. And I think this is what you would say, I would say, you would say is ideological. This
Absolutely.
idea that we're supposed to gloss over what happened as a misunderstanding. And when he actually corrects her, when she says, let's never have another misunderstanding, and he corrects her, I was expecting him to be like, this wasn't a misunderstanding. Your parents are bigots.
And you did some reprehensible things.
Me? And it's just like, it made me convulse with rage.
Yeah, totally. It's like caught in the middle or racial tension. It's like taking away that there's an agent and like the false equivalent. Totally.
And then she's just like, let's have a new beginning. And it's like, well, no.
And he's like, okay.
Yeah. Your love is enough for me. And it's like, it shouldn't be.
Boo. I want Sandra shipped off somewhere. She needs to just get out of town.
Do you think Switzerland, maybe?
Sure.
Chapter 12 is just the birthday party for Lila that we don't care about. She is acting like a quote-unquote spoiled brat until she gets there and realizes it's a party for her, and all of a sudden all's forgiven. They have a This Is Your Life Lila Fowler banner. They even got tons of ice cream in Lila's favorite flavor. Do you know Lila's favorite flavor of ice cream?
What is it?
It's $1 million mocha. This woman is so aspirational to me. Right?
That's funny. That's funny.
I mean, it's funny. It's true. It's probably delicious.
It sounds good. God, I wish I had some $1 million mocha.
Right? That you said you needed a coffee. What you really need is $1 million mocha.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is great. Enid wants to leave the party early because there's a million little things to do before someone comes for a visit. Only Nana isn't just coming for a visit, she's moving in. Listeners will remember 6 or 8 hours ago, we said 2 words, Enid's grandma, and that led us to the cliffhanger, which is Enid's grandma was living alone Enid invited her to live with them. She's living with them. Is there a less, I mean, and you know how they're mama's boys? You know I'm a grandmama's boy. Like famously, big granny lover, big granny crier. Even I was like, oh, come on, who cares? The important thing is that Nana is moving in. She won't be lonesome anymore, and we'll be a real family. What? Also, what? A real family is only a family where the grandmother lives with you? Fine.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Feels ideological, potentially?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Sorry. You're like, for the love of God, read these 2 boring paragraphs, you dumb son of a bitch. And don't talk about my mom that way. Elizabeth knew how important the notion of family was to Enid. Her parents were divorced, which I think is the first time we're hearing about that.
No.
I didn't know.
That's canon. That's canon.
Her parents were divorced and she was the only child, so she had a real sense of how much her mother depended on her, and vice versa. Elizabeth couldn't help but wonder, though, what new pressures would be exerted on Enid now that her grandmother would be living with them. She gave her friend an impulsive hug. Why would you need an impulsive hug unless you were a closeted lesbian? Well, I'm sorry
To
you have
stop
to leave...
yourself from coming.
Exactly. Well, I'm sorry you have to leave early, but I know it's for a good cause, she said warmly, and promise you'll let me come all over and help. Oh, sorry. Promise you'll let me come over and help first thing tomorrow. I promise, said Enid happily. Elizabeth grinned. She could tell Enid had only one thought on her mind, and that was getting home to start preparing in earnest for her grandmother's arrival. Does Enid realize how much her life will change when her grandmother moves in? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 43. The hilariously titled Hard Choices.
This guy figure makes no sense. Can I just say? Because first it's like, okay, first it's like Eden's.
Somebody's got the giggles.
Eden's like, there's so much to do with my grandmother. And then it's like, she was so excited. Then it's like, she's so excited to be a real family. Okay. Then it's like, her parents are divorced. She's the only child. So you think it's going to say, like, so she was lonely and she wanted more people in the house. But it doesn't say that. It's like, her parents were divorced. She's the only child. So she had a real sense of how much her mother depended on her, vice versa. Like, what the fuck does that mean? And like, how's grandma going to affect this? Like, I don't know.
Okay, Giggle Puss. Do we have time for one update from a listener?
Mm-hmm.
I have heard from the furry community, and I am listening. Furries, not just a sexual thing. For some people, sexual. For some people, it's just about dressing up. And some people just love drawing. And I would like to apologize for the furry community for any misinformation I may have inadvertently spread. And actually, calling it inadvertent feels like a cop-out. So I'm just going to say, I apologize for any misinformation I spread.
I don't apologize for that because I'm pretty sure you said I think. I'm pretty sure when we said, is it always sexual? I'm pretty sure you said I think.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I could have Googled, so I would have known.
No, that's not our... No,
that's not our thing.
I don't apologize. I don't apologize.
Okay. Well, I would just like to, on behalf of myself and not Pardo, and we wish all our furry listeners a great day. And to our listeners who are not yet members of the furry community, also a great day.
And if you are having a racist parent and are trying to not be exploding on a speedboat, instead, just get a little studio apartment so you don't have to live with them anymore. Just a little modest studio apartment.
A pied-à-terre, as the French kind of say. I don't know how to say it.
I'm sure you could find one. Stay away from the speedboat. Stay in your apartment. Just listen to podcasts.
Our podcast.
Rate and review. Don't forget it.
Yeah.
Wait, can I ask you a question? What's after hard choices?
So it's hard choices, pretenses, family secrets, which I'm already excited for, depending on the family.
Family secrets for me is, I love it so much. That book is life. Pretenses is, I think, Stephen being annoying.
That's his way. And then after Family Secrets, we get Super Thriller Number a Dose, On the Run.
All right. Anything else?
We touched on furries. Did you get to say your powerful anti-racist messaging around whatever? Yeah, you got that in too. Yeah, you did. So I think we're good.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.